All right, Beaver Creek, we're back. Ian Harris, Libero Copper. How are you, brother?
It's actually really exciting to be here, and Beaver Creek has been going very, very optimistic sentiment here in this time around. So a lot of buzz.
Yeah, well, a ton of buzz now. Copper, it's an interesting setup, right? So we have, seemingly oil has pulled back, but copper still hangs in above $4. Clearly that's telling us something about the market, right? The supply-demand situation in the market, that we're tight, right? Like clearly, because you kind of assume the demand is going to be similar for all commodities. Maybe demand's stronger on for copper, but maybe you can talk about the supply side of the equation and how we should look at this.
Yeah, copper pricing is always interesting because there seems to be all that pull between a short-term focus between traders, medium-term fundamentals, long-term fundamentals. And I say to myself, if I'm 25 years, and if I would have gone back 15 years and say, copper is on the cover of The Economist being called the new oil. And by the way, equities have never been cheaper, you'd be like, impossible. But it's what's happening right now and really creates a lot of the dynamic and a big part of the strategies we're trying to apply, because I think that it's, a lot of it was about the energy transition, the new oil, and I think that there, whether you believe in the fundamentals of why it's happening, right? But there's another one. There's a little kind of, people have a foot on the accelerator, but I think the real big one that's coming in the background is AI, right? You cannot slow it down because you will get behind. Right? And so that's more power, more energy, more focus. And so there's all these reasons, these fundamental reasons that demand and supply just cannot keep up with that level of demand.
And when you think about the types of deposits there are in the world, right? Like anytime you pull out how many discoveries of copper there have been, give it a 30, 40-year chart, it's depressing, right? Like it's just sloping downward. Maybe you can talk a bit of the context of why that graph looks the way it is, and why discoveries have been dwindling over time. And are there any big deposits still left? And talk about the geology of all this.
Well, first I'm a mining engineer, so I'm like the doctor on TV, right? But I'll play a devil's advocate, and many times we've seen that chart. Peak oil, peak copper, you see it over and over again. But there is a fundamental difference that's happening this time, is that every time there was a peak, there was a run, projects just expanded. They dropped head grades, they went deeper, deeper. The problem is they're getting too deep, too expensive, too low grade. We need new, fresh supply. And as you meant, there's been an under capital investment overall in the exploration of copper over an extended period of time. So I call it, I can't tell you when the wheels are going to fall off, but I know the wheels are going to fall off.
Right. And we just, in terms of the projects that you see out there, including your own, right? How can you describe the landscape and how your company fits in with respect to, do we have deposits of size to make up for all of these demand trends that you talked about?
No, I believe they're in the ground.
Yes.
But they take 20 years, right? That's the issue. But if you look and you go all the way from the bottom of Chile and you go all the way up to Panama, there's 12 of the 20 largest copper projects in the world. Between Chile, which was the world's largest producer of copper and continues to be, right, on a dominance. And well, now it's Chile and Peru. It's moving north, and I call it the wet South America, the dry South America and the wet South America, right? It's easier to discover copper. Oh, blue rock, drill, we're finding copper mines, right? But as you start moving up, you get more coverage, it's difficult, but you see it in Ecuador. I mean, I was a part of the first industrial scale build of a copper mine in the history of Ecuador, right? And there's more projects there. You see bigger projects, and then you continue up. This is a very prolific belt. It's multiple subduction zones, and that is where you find the majority of the big projects. So I think that's where you want to be. If you want to say, oh, well, we need to produce more copper in the next 20 years that we produce in the history of mankind, then those new projects have to be coming from those areas, right? And so that's the place and the focus to be. And that's what, you need so much copper, little guys won't do it. You need bigger projects, right? And I'm going to wouldn't mind going into a little bit of what I believe is an ideal situation.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear about the project you have, the opportunity, and it sets the table, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I always like to think, we had a last round. Copper took a jump and then came right back down, and a lot of people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And so I like to think of me sitting in the seat of one of the bigger copper companies in the world making decisions, right? And you don't want to repeat and get fired, right?
Yeah.
So, and some of these bigger builds that failed, or bigger builds that the CapEx just, the cost took runaways, right? And I think people now want their cake and eat it too, right? It's a 30,000 ton per day mine startup, right? It's manageable. It's the biggest sag mills, biggest trucks. You get the economy of scale, right? But you want to be able to go 30 and then go to 60, then to 90, then to 120, then to 150, right? You're adding these blocks of more or less 30. So
this is what the majors are looking for as well.
If I was a major, that's what I would be looking for, and I think I'm probably correct. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want a good startup project that then they can quickly scale. So you want the resource for a very large project, but with a very good startup scenario, right? And that's tough for market because juniors want to show the biggest NPV and the biggest thing. So we have to come to kind of a middle ground to understand you need the big resource, right? But you also need a very solid starter project.
So it's a scalable solution.
It's a scalable solution, right? So you have your cake and eat it too, right?
And your project ticks those boxes, right? Like
we are definitely developing it to make sure it ticks those boxes, right? Today, it's checking one of those boxes. We have 600 million tons, 30,000 tons per day. You only need 200, right? But we also know that it needs to be in that billions of tons, and it's got that exploration footprint, the geological footprint that says this is something that could get much, much, much bigger, right? So, but that is the way we'll be looking at it. We'll be looking at it from a perspective of both market and from corporates, right? You got to have your cake and eat it too.
Fantastic. Now, talk to us about the next steps for the assets, catalysts.
Well, so Libero now is within the Fiore group, and I think it's a big changer. Myself, I like to say I'm part of one of the few large-scale copper mines that's been built over the last 20 years. There's not too many.
Right.
A director, Ernie Mast, did the same as CEO of Cobre Panama, and with Inmet, got all the permits in place. First Quantum came in, built it. It was the 12th largest copper mine in the world up to just a little ago, and hopefully it will get back to being the 12th largest copper mine in the world. It has to come back, right? But when you say, and I said, Ernie, I didn't think about this, but we've been involved in like a really high percentage of the biggest copper mines built over the last 20 years. And so that's...
We need that visualization. I can see your faces on every copper mine.
Let's not get too extreme. And then I go, we have a unique experience within a group, and then you bolt on coming in Frank Giustra, Fiore Group, and access to capital, because
and that's important right now. Access to capital, like people don't give it enough weight.
Well, there's ways you can, and a lot of guys. I'm going to make value through discovery,
right?
And that's a perfectly valid way. But what's happening to a lot of projects? They get there, and then they come off a cliff and they get stuck because now they have a larger scale project, they can't attract the capital, or they don't have the experience on how to move it forward. And I think that's what's creating a huge opportunity. So we have an asset. We're very much looking forward to getting things very exciting there before the end of the year, but then leveraging our valuation to start acquiring additional assets with a bigger vision is what Frank brings to the table, Fiore brings to the table. He doesn't want to build projects, he wants to build companies. So I'm very excited, and I love the feeling. There's some excitement. People are, the conversation last year was, how bad can it get, right? This year is, how do I make it go up, right? But there's this feeling. It's not the downside people aren't worried about. It's what, they feel it's coming. Yeah. There's anxiety around knowing it's coming.
Yeah.
Right, which is a complete and different change, which is very exciting about this Beaver Creek.
Ian, thank you so much. A great overview, and we'll keep mixing it up,
man.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. That's Ian Harris, Libero Copper. Copper is the thing, guys. Beaver Creek, Grizzle.